Thank you for tuning in to the Sunset Drive. This is Nadia, or as you usually know me, Whaleheart. I'm here today talking with, honestly, my personal hero, Jane Jaffer, who is a novel writer, children's book writer, the Let's Read charity bookshop pioneer, a yoga teacher, and a counselor. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Sunset Drive.
Thank you, Nadia. It's really great to be here.
I'm very excited to interview you today. Usually on Wednesdays, we have a segment called Wonderful Wednesday, where we invite local or just artists in our community, artists, writers, musicians, and we want to know more about, the creative process here, how living in Oman affects what you put out here and give, and what you receive too from the creative community. And so I wanted to have you here because when I ran into you at, where were?
At the Let's Read charity bookshop?
Yeah, at the Let's Read charity bookshop. I remember you saying, well, my new book is out. And I was like, oh, alrighty, I want to know more about it. And so this is your new book.
Yes, it's called Xavian and the Arabian Leopard Cub, and the inspiration behind it was actually my grandson Xavian. And it's really about...
So is this Xavian?
Yeah, this is Xavian.
Oh, I love that.
And basically, in the story, he goes to Salalah with his cousin and his sister, and they meet some of the animals that live in the Dhofar region. And so at the back of the book, there's quite a lot of information about particularly the endangered species of animals that live down in Dhofar.
Wow. So you've written several children's books, right?
4 children's books, and then I've done also collections of stories from our children's writing competition that we do every year. This is the 18th year in January when we launch the next one.
I find that so incredible. I'm thinking with this book and what you just said about the environment, do you often use your writing to incorporate these elements of raising awareness?
Yes, I think it's important to raise awareness. I know when I wrote Sari and the Turtles, which was actually about Xavian's sister, we had recently been to Ras Al Had, and I really wanted to highlight the plight of turtles and how, there are so many reasons why they are endangered. So especially, some species of the turtles are endangered. So yes, I think it's important also to look at environmental issues like, keeping the beaches clean, marine pollution, plastics, using bottles once, and then throwing them away. And so, I suppose because I was a primary school teacher to start with, and that always comes out that I'm trying to inform as well as, educate as well as entertain. I would like to put it that way.
What is it about writing a story that you think helps really communicate a message more than other mediums?
That's a very interesting point, Nadia. Well, I think, when I first came here, I really felt that there were not many books which featured Omani children or Omani landscape and setting. And I think children are much more motivated to read books where they can relate to the characters and to the actual place, the setting of the book. So that's why I wanted to write books which featured Omani children. And when I go around to schools and read to children, they say, oh yeah, I know, my cousin's name is Dana, and I've written Dana and the dolphin. I've seen a dolphin, so they all get involved in the story. And so I think it's quite important for children to be able to relate to the stories that they read. So it motivates them to read more, I think. Did that answer your question? I'm not sure if it did.
I think it began to, because what you're saying is that, because children love and engage better with work that they see themselves in.
Yes.
And I still want to know though, how does a story
as opposed to
because my nephew right now, I love him so much, but he's a he is very factually oriented. He's very story is not quite his primary interest, the way it's images, visuals, So and I wonder how to gently move him towards what are stories that I can show you, read to you, that would grab you enough to keep you reading forever,
Well, I think the thing is that when when you read a story, or certainly when you write a story, you want to incorporate certain key components. One is, really well described environment, setting, and really quirky, fun characters that the children can relate to. But also there needs to be these kind of antagonistic features, something that makes the story exciting.
So the little points of conflict.
How did the character overcome these issues, whether it be, a wicked witch or, an accident, whatever it might be that's a problem, and that they have something that's stopping them from reaching their goal. And so it's quite important to have that story arc, and at the end for the children to read that, there is a happy ending. Of course, there isn't always a happy ending in real life, but I think a story needs to be exciting, and that's something that sometimes lacks in the factual reading, because it can be a bit dry. So I think a story is much more exciting. There's suspense, and then the visual characters and things. So I think it's good to do that.
You mentioned too being a primary school teacher. I remember years and years ago now. I was a grade 1 teacher, and our story timing at the end of the day was strangely the time they looked forward to it. We would sit. We would have them sit around a carpet, and we would read off of, we would read things that, to me now as a grown-up, I'm like, wow, I actually really love these books. We would read Frog and Toad and the Magic School Bus. I don't know, it really struck me that there is a magic that children's books can share with children that I don't think, you could watch a Disney movie, it'll give you a kind of magic, but I think reading, especially, I'm a lifelong reader. I don't know how this happened.
Reading is a key, Nadia, isn't it?
Yeah.
I always think reading is a key. It's not only a key to, a broader vocabulary, but it encourages or inspires your imagination. And when you watch something on the television or a film, it tends to be passive because it's all done for you. Whereas when you read a book, you have to imagine. You might have some visuals, but still you're imagining and you're working out what might happen, and there's a lot more going on in your brain. And I think Einstein said, if you want intelligent children, read them fairy tales. I think it's important to stimulate children's imagination. And reading is also a key to better qualifications, because the more you read, the broader your knowledge of the world will become, and you get more empathy for other people. You learn about yourself because you think, well, if I was in that position, what would I do? And it's also pure escapism, and it helps you to relax. So there's so many benefits to reading.
Yeah,
that's what I think anyway.
I honestly completely agree with you. And even to this day, I find myself still, reading is my primary form of escapism, I'll even say. And I think the imagination component is really the biggest hook for me.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to make the movement, right, that is between, children want to move around. They want to be engaged with their environment. But there's also a magic to the sitting on the carpet listening to the story. And as a primary teacher and a children's book writer, and probably someone who works constantly with children in those settings, what do you think really helps them connect to books? You said earlier characters, right? But
we don't have many libraries here. That's one of the reasons why Let's Read, we set up the Let's Read charity bookshop, because it's important for children to be able to choose their own books. I think they're much more motivated to read books they've chosen themselves. And our Maktabati library bus, mobile library, which goes around to the schools and the villages, offers children that opportunity to actually go and choose their own book. And I think that's part of it. But, I think it all starts with mother or father reading to children, reading a bedtime story. It's that bonding, it's relaxing, it's a soothing time of the day, and then bringing those characters to life in a story is really very special to children, I think.
Yeah.
I think we don't spend enough time reading to our children. And I also always say to children to try and read for at least an hour or half an hour a day, silent reading, because the better reader you are, the more you're going to read. The more you read, the better educated you're going to be. And it goes on and on to the point where you're going to have, as I said, better qualifications, better job opportunities.
Yeah.
The benefits are absolutely endless, really.
It's definitely, I think, one of the most useful skills to have, especially the farther in you go into being able to analyze different texts and things. I want to go back, though, because we were talking about, you mentioned your Let's Read charity bookshop. And you mentioned, too, that you go to villages, like outside of Muscat.
Yeah. Well, originally, when we started, 2007, we started the Let's Read charity, Let's Read campaign to promote the love of reading to children in Oman, and we work under the auspices of Daralata. And when we started, we would just do book drives and then sell books once a month, and then with the money that we raised, we would buy Arabic children's books and go out into the villages, to nursery schools, to hospitals. We've done a few, like playrooms in hospitals and things like that. And then we were very lucky in 2012. The Women's Guild collected enough money for us from one of their, dinner dance things, and they were able to buy us a bus. So then we ripped out all the seats.
The seats, yeah.
And turned it into a library.
So within this bus, there are shelves. There are just lots. Do you know how many books are in there?
Well, it depends, obviously, because we have to keep replenishing it, and that's the problem, because we don't always get sufficient sponsorship. We like to spend about 5,000 riyals a year at the Muscat Book Fair, and we also always used to go to the Sharjah Book Fair as well, but we haven't been able to afford to do that. Certainly since COVID, it was more difficult to get the sponsorship, actually. But yeah, we do have a lot of books in there at any one time, and in the charity bookshop also we have a charity. Well, it's actually looks like a bus. It's a mock bus, and that's a children's library actually in on the third floor of Oman Avenues Mall, and that's where we do a lot of craft activities, and we have lots and lots of books. I think we've probably got about 6,000 books.
Yeah, I managed to run into you there actually the other day, and I was, you are right about how there aren't a lot of libraries, and there also aren't really a lot of bookstores, which
and the books are expensive in a lot of the bookstores.
Expensive. I don't know if it's what it is about like books here, because there are actually a lot of locals who you will see when you go out to coffee shops. They are reading. So I wonder how, I don't know, that's a different topic, I think. So with Let's Read, right, and especially with the setting up of this bus, I'm curious about what have your favorite moments with that been?
Wow. Well, 2013, we actually launched the Maktabati bus, first bus, and now we had a second bus, which was very kindly bought for us by Opal, or the oil companies, and they had it custom made in China, the second bus, and so that's amazing. And when we've launched those buses, when we've gone out and seen children come running onto the bus sometimes they come with just a few hundred bezas, and that's quite good because they have to do maths as well, because they buy their own books. So it's very special to see that. It's also wonderful to do storytelling in the bus in Avenues Mall. Craft activities. We have lots of special, writers, authors, people, artists come and, graphic designers, people coming, cartoonists, to give workshops for the children, and different authors who come from other countries come and talk to the children. There's so many special moments, really. Yeah, it's been fun. And I think one thing I really love is the writing competition award ceremonies that we hold usually in May every year for the last 17 years, and seeing those kids, their faces light up when they found that they've won and that their work's in print. As I say, we've done 4, 5, 6 books of collections of the stories. This one I particularly like. It's called Stories of Our Ancestors. And with this one, we asked children to actually research their family history. And the winners are the children on the back. And on the front of the book are their ancestors. And they're completely mixed bunch of people. And these two guys, old guys here, they were fighting each other in the Jebel Akhdar War.
Oh my gosh.
And their grandsons are in the same class. So that was pretty amazing. I mean, there's just so many interesting stories. One talks about partition. Their grandparents had to move from India to Pakistan. All sorts of interesting stories like that. This guy was a bomb disposal guy in the Second World War. Very, very interesting stories that the children discovered. And I do think that when you learn about your history, your own personal history, you find out where you came from. You also find out who you are a little bit, and what your ancestors went through for you to be here. And without their love stories, you wouldn't exist. Yeah. But also, some of them went through war, famine, having to move, all those things that we see today, and you can really relate to it if you know that your own ancestors went through that. So I think it's interesting for people to actually learn more about their ancestors. So I'm very passionate about that.
I find that to be an incredibly beautiful way, not only to keep their stories alive, but also have those children know the story they're part of.
Yeah. And I've done some ghost writing. I've done two particular memoirs of sort of prominent individuals from Oman whose grandparents or great-grandparents or whatever, or themselves, have gone through incredible struggles.
I would like to hear a lot more about that, but we're to take a little break right now, and we're going to hear more from you after the little break.
Thank you very much. Look forward to it.
Hello. Thank you for tuning in to The Sunset Drive. This is Nadia Taei, also known as Whaleheart on The Sunset Drive. I'm here today with Jane Jaffer, and we are talking about writing. So I'm going to go back and ask you, what is it that got you into writing in the first place?
Hi, Nadia. Well, thank you very much. That's a very interesting question. Years ago, I used to run a holistic center called Elixir Holistic Center. And part of that, we had a little kind of a bookshop there. And one day I was browsing the shelves and found a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And Julia had written this book to help with people who have some kind of an artistic block. Musicians, artists, writers, who for some reason don't feel they can create. And, for you and me, we know that creative expression is very important. And if you are a creative person and you're not creating, you're likely to feel depressed. So I started reading it, and there are a lot of exercises in the book. One of them was morning pages, and the other one was artist dates. Now, artist dates means you take yourself off on your own, maybe once or twice a week, and you go somewhere where you feel either very relaxed or very stimulated. So it could be an art gallery, it could be a museum, it could be walking along the beach, going to the mountains, but somewhere where you can be reflective, where you can be on the receiving end. I suppose that's the most important thing, because sometimes we're like, a well that needs replenishing. You need to actually feed yourself with knowledge, with emotion, with creativity in some ways. So an artist date is very important. And the other thing, as I just mentioned, is morning pages. Now, what that entailed was that you buy yourself a little exercise book, and every morning when you wake up, you open that book before you have your coffee, you have your breakfast, before you even get out of bed, and you start writing. And it's a sort of a stream of consciousness. And you just write. Now, initially, you're not supposed to even read what you've written. And then a few weeks later, you find yourself reading it and thinking, wow, it's very cathartic, and it's also about learning about yourself. And I started with, maybe just writing a few lines. Within a few weeks, I was writing 10 pages in the morning. And this kind of led me on. This led me on to writing poetry. Somehow, I started writing poetry. Now, it coincided actually with my father being diagnosed with cancer. And so I nursed him for some time, and I thought it would be really nice to work with him on a project as he was ill. And he was an artist, so it was really nice. So we came up with this little book, Women on the Edge.
Yeah.
And my father did all the illustrations inside. So it was really nice that he got to see some of his paintings and art in, in print. But it was great to have that special time with him. And so I started writing about my childhood. I wrote about different, conditions and different times in my life when you're feeling lack of confidence, when you're feeling, alone, or when you're feeling that you don't fit in. So I wrote it all down over a period of time. And so that's how the book sort of came into being. And then because I'd written one book, I then thought, I think I might write a children's book. And so that led me on to writing Dana and the Dolphin, about a little Omani girl in a village in Oman who goes out in a boat and can't get back because there aren't any oars, and she's lost on the sea. And the dolphin helps her to get her to come home.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that was a really lovely one, and that's one of the ones that a lot of children really relate to. They love that story.
So this is your first children's book.
So that was my first children's book, yes. But then I started years ago. I joined a writers' support group, and one of the first things we had to do was write a paragraph to start a story. And I remember writing about a girl who's walking home late at night and she hears footsteps behind her. And, that's a very scary thing for a girl on her own in a big city. And somehow after this meeting, we would sort of carry on, do some other exercises. I found myself just continuing with this story.
Yeah.
It became a book, Scent of a Rose.
Yes.
And it's about a girl who's stalked. Her name is Rose, and she gets stalked by, a stalker. But you should write about what you know. And by this time, of course, I was living in Oman, so I thought, well, I'm going to have to write about Oman. I mean, it's different if you're writing about an imaginary dystopian world or whatever. You can write whatever you like. But if you're writing about a real place, you need to go there and you need to soak up the atmosphere and you need to get all your senses involved in it. So, Scent of a Rose is about a girl who comes to Muscat and she gets lost in the desert. And the Bedouin help her. I'm not going to say any more. I'll spoil the story.
I love that. So you began with poetry and then moved to a children's book and then novels.
Yeah.
But it seems like you dabble a lot in these different genres. How do you do that?
Yeah,
you wear like a different writing hat.
My husband keeps telling me if I actually stuck with one genre, I might actually get good at it. I think it's just my nature that I love a challenge, and I find it very difficult. I'm not one of those people that can focus on one thing. That's why I've done many different things in my life. I'm waiting to see what I'm going to do when I grow up.
Me too.
So anyway, I like to try different things. So writing children's book is all about my love of children and wanting to share the love of reading with them and getting them interested in reading. But as I say, I also really, really am passionate about life stories. And so that's why I've done the ghostwriting, and that led me on to my next book, which is called Love in the Time of Zanzibar. Because I had done another book about a prominent individual who lived here, Memoirs of an Omani Gentleman from Zanzibar, and that led me on to really learning more about the history of Zanzibar and Oman's part in it, of course. And so I wrote the book about Saida Salma, who was the daughter of Said the Great.
Oh, wow.
And she was born in 1844. And it's a fascinating story. So it's based on real life, and I call it inspired by real life. But of course, it is really kind of romantic fiction, if you like, or historical fiction, you could call it. So obviously, I've had to add the impact, the dialogue. You know, a lot of it is obviously out of my imagination. You know, how did her circumstances affect her?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, she was very different. But her life really is the one that we can point to find out how it was living in a palace in Zanzibar in 1844, you know, because she wrote down her memoirs in 1888. She wrote it in German, in fact, and then it was translated into English. And there's just one paragraph about her mother, Jilferdin, in that book. And so I wanted to explore this unknown historical character. And so I wrote about Jilferdin as well in the book. So, yeah.
I was going to ask too, because it sounds like this novel in particular required a lot more research. Was the memoir the only like source of that information that you probably included here, or how do you go about the research?
I did go to the archives in Zanzibar, and I also actually met with some of her descendants.
Wow.
When they came here. Yes, I was very, very lucky to have that opportunity. Excuse me. So yeah, there weren't many sources of information, that's for sure. But there is, in the museum in Zanzibar, there is a whole room devoted to Saida Salma. So there is a bit of information about her. But it just sort of caught my imagination because she had quite a tragic life, and I really wanted to bring that to the public eye. So, and then more recently I've helped Dr. Rafai write, Dr. Akbar write the memoirs of his father. Dr. Rafai became the Sultan Qaboos's physician, and when he arrived here in the late 1950s, he kept a diary of all his experiences as a doctor in Somalia and also other places, and it was fascinating to hear about how a doctor survived in those very, very difficult basic circumstances in the late 50s and 60s until he became, as I say, you know, the physician for our late Majesty Sultan Qaboos and his mother's physician as well. So that was a very interesting book to write.
Yeah, so it sounds like also especially since you write so much about Oman, and a lot of our history is quite new. It sounds like these almost oral stories are the key to the past.
Yeah.
And that's why I really appreciate too your collection of the ancestor stories, because where would those stories go if they weren't written down? You know, I think it's really special to be able to be aware of the legacy that we're part of.
Yeah.
And because especially like you mentioned, these grandchildren are in class together, but they're from descendants of people who are at war against each other.
Exactly.
Like it's incredible to me. There's been I think this is amazing.
And I think, you know, these books are by children for children.
Oh wow.
And I think it's really nice for children to read about people's lives, you know, people around the world, so that they're not totally only learning about Oman and Oman's history, but also about world history. It's much more fun to read like a fly on the wall account, someone who was really there, you know, something that really did happen, and it brings it to your attention. Whereas if you read a boring history book in class, it can be very boring.
It's not as alive.
It's dry. It's not as alive. So these are real characters. They really lived, and I think that's good. Another thing we did, because with our writing competition, we don't only ask children to write stories. Sometimes it is fiction, but other times we've asked them to write factual books. And this one was my hometown. And what we asked them to do here was to write about their hometown. And some of them are in Oman, like places like Sur or Nizwa, Muscat. Others were places in Morocco or Algeria, France, England, wherever because it's open to all children who live in Oman, so from children from the international community as well. And this is also like, it's a geography lesson to read it, because you're reading about the history but also the geography of the world. And I found this fascinating. Of course, with plagiarism, it's very difficult now. And with AI,
ChatGPT
is going to be more difficult to make sure that children aren't just copy-pasting from the thing. So what we said to the children was that you have to write what makes that town special to you. Is it someone who lived there? Is it something that happened there? Is it something that's produced there? And explain more, not just, it's not just from Wikipedia. You have to actually write something personal, if you like, about that place.
Prior to the publication,
that was quite interesting.
Prior to the publication of these stories, do you guys edit their work, or just publish them?
A little bit. We try not to do too much of that, because it should be the child's work. But obviously, if they've made a grammatical error, if they've made something really glaringly difficult wrong, then we would talk to them and say, do you want to just change that? But generally, no, we don't. We just publish it as is. And this one was really good, because we asked them to write about their favourite place in Oman. And again, some of them wrote about their own hometowns in Oman, and some just wrote about their favourite beach or their favourite mountain or whatever. So we've got some lovely stories in there. And this one sells very well because tourists like to buy it, So, that was fun as well, writing that one.
Thank you so much. We're going to go on a quick break. Enjoy the music. And we're back. Thank you for tuning into the Sunset Drive. It's me, Whaleheart, and here today I am discussing books and writing with Jane Jaffer. So we are going to be wrapping up soon, but I wanted to squeeze in a few more questions, especially about a theme or a message you hope that your readers could walk away from after reading your books.
Wow, well, that's quite a loaded question. I think for me, I'm definitely a people person. I want to know what makes people tick. And that's probably why I went on to become a professional therapeutic counsellor and a Reiki healer, because it's dealing with people. I love people. I want to know what makes them tick and what motivates them. And so I think my main reason for writing is to help children and adults, if you like, develop empathy for other people. So, we're not talking sympathy, we're talking empathy, which means being able to walk in someone else's shoes, being able to imagine yourself in that situation, because empathy is understanding. And if you have understanding for other people, you're going to treat them better. Yeah. And I feel that's going to lead to a better world. I think that the only thing you can do as an individual is find what you're good at. We can't be good at everything. I sometimes have people come for counselling and they say, I'm no good at this, I'm no good at that. Look, no one is good at everything, but we all have something that we like doing and that we're proud of and that we can do. And I think find what you're good at and then share it with the world. Muhammad Ali said that is the rent money for living in this world. If you can share what you've learnt with other people and make your little corner of the world a better place, that's all you can do. And I mean, at a time like this, when we have awful things happening in the world, it's important to hang on to that, because you can feel such helplessness. And I think it's very important to be able to say, well, my little corner of the world, this is what we're doing to make it better. And that is, it requires you to have empathy for other people, because, people who are self-absorbed don't have time for anyone else. And that's what we're trying to change. I feel that's what I'm trying to change by writing books which, some of the characters are flawed. They don't have to be perfect. No one is perfect. The main thing is to kind of, it's like when you're in any relationship, you have to forget about the bad things or the things that are not good in it, and focus on the good things. Focus on the positives and living gratitude also. So, we're trying to, for example, the latest book, Avian and the Arabian Leopard Cub, for children and adults to have an understanding of those animals. So I've kind of almost like personalized those animals, given them names like Eggy the eagle and Bexy the ibex, Jamila the camel, and trying to, and Roxy the oryx, and trying to help people have a love for each other and for nature, and for the world, the place we live.
I really love this message because the act of reading is such a private one, but the way you talk about it, it sounds like reading is also in that private connection you can make in a story to characters in a story. You also learn to connect not just to other people, but to issues that concern the world. And I find that really beautiful. And I hope that our listeners can pick up a book of yours. Where can they do that? If they were interested?
Well, certainly in the Let's Read charity bookshop, which is on the 3rd floor of Oman Avenues Mall. Some of my books are also on Amazon and in some other bookshops, but generally, that's the place at the bookshop that I run in Avenues Mall.
Okay, 3rd floor of Avenues Mall, and there are a lot of different genres of books available, and people can also drop off their own books.
Oh yes, any donations are always welcome. We have books not only in Arabic and English for children, for adults, every genre, but also we have books in French, in German, Malay, Farsi, whoever has given us books, from whatever language, we've got lots of different books. So come and check it out.
Yes.
And the books are only $1 for a paperback and $2 for a hardback.
Wow, that is honestly, that's a great way to keep promoting reading because, I think the barrier for me is often, because now I'll read on a Kindle or even PDFs on my phone.
Yeah.
It is the price.
I was going to say, reading is a very private, personal thing to do, but one thing that has really helped me over the years is I have a book club, which I belong to since 1986.
Oh, wow.
and obviously
it's still going on
different people come and go, but we meet once a month. And we all discuss the same book after reading it over a month. In the old days, it was just which book could we find 6 copies of? Now, of course, we can use our Kindles or people bring books back for us or whatever. But we choose books. And the thing is that a lot of those books I wouldn't have read because I didn't choose them. And so I read more broadly because I'm reading books that other people chose. And the conversation is always so interesting, especially if different people disagree.
Yeah,
that makes a really good discussion. And I've met like-minded people. The main thing for you to do, I feel, is to find people who are like-minded, people who think like you. So people who love reading, people who love writing are obviously, they're my people, they're my tribe, if you like. So that's helped me a lot because, at the end of the day, I'm a foreigner in this country, even though I've been here 43 years.
Wow. That is that's mind-blowing to me.
Well, I'm very lucky because there is such a welcoming community here and everyone's very open and friendly and we're so lucky to live in a peaceful country.
Yeah, and I feel like your books also try to capture the kind of magic that's probably kept you here for that many years.
Well, I think so, I just love Oman, I really do.
I'm really, really grateful that you came to our show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, no, it's an honor. I'm wondering if people are interested in following your work or other, where can they find out more about you? If you have social media.
Well, there's Let's Read and there's, Let's Read is on Instagram and on Facebook. I have my own website, but that's probably more for the counselling, but... I do have my own Instagram account as a writer as well.
Okay.
So
what is the handle if we're interested?
Oh,
in
just Jane Jaffer.
Just Jane Jaffer. Dot, no underline.
No,
okay.
Just Jane Jaffer. Counsellor Jane Jaffer, I think, is the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that will conclude our show for today. Thank you so much for coming and joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And I hope that you listeners are out there having a wonderful drive home or a wonderful afternoon, day, wherever you are in your lives today. I hope it is beautiful. And thank you.